Hello. Hello to one and all over here. All right. So, hello to one and all present here. I am Falak Sangvi and I am in the second year MBBS from SRNC Chennai. So, I hope all are safe and doing well and have adjusted to this new norm due to this pandemic, which has certainly turned our lives upside down, completely changed our routines, definitely. So today's webinar, I'm going to tell you about how is it going to go about and what is it about basically. So today's webinar will be answering all your questions related to this new norm or a new routine which has affected the students in their academics and which in turn reflects on their mental health, to which some might be unaware of how to deal with and are or were experiencing a few highs and lows during these months in lockdown. Any situation or question you have or experienced, you are free to ask, and so don't hold back and just ask away. Hopefully, we can answer majority of your questions and clear your doubts.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining. This is Shoro from Emosync, and we would like to start this session from here. So thank you Palak for the introduction part, and a few words about Emosync. We have been working with this mental health community for a long time now, and we have been doing this webinars and various kind of activities as a part of our mental health initiative. So, regarding today's webinar, we have partnered with Sanghati Foundation, Doctor for a Cause, and Doctor for Cause, and we will start it from here. Today, our speaker is Dr. Tirthankar Gaurakurata. Hello, Dr. Tirthankar Gaurakurata. Am I audible?
Hi, am I audible?
Hello.
Shorab, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, hello.
Uh,
Tell me.
yes. I think Ronak is here. Ronak, would you like to introduce Doctor for a Cause? Ronak, can you hear me? Ronak?
Maybe you can try giving the session control to Ronak. That might help.
Yes. Uh, Ronak,
You're
you are
not
not
audible.
audible. No, Ronak, you are not audible.
Check the mic settings, please.
Ronak is not audible. Hello, Ronak. Are you with us?
Maybe Ronak can try giving the session control to me. Let me see if I can speak to Ronak.
Okay. Okay, over to you.
So, am I audible?
Yes, and also
Okay.
visible.
Ronak, can you hear me? I think there is a bandwidth issue, maybe.
Hmm.
I'm once again transferring the session control to Ronak. Let's see what happens.
I think Ronak is having some technical problems, so we can go ahead with our session. So I would like to call anyone from DFC team who wants to uh, introduce DFC, Doctor for Cause.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so welcome everyone to the second webinar, Pen, Paper and Pandemic. I am Ubik Chakraborty, a second year medical student from KPC Medical College. And I'm a member of Doctors for a Cause and also the Mental Health TF. And we are an NGO primarily based out of Kolkata, uh, comprising primarily of doctors, young doctors, and medical students, and our work is usually related to academics and spreading awareness about various social issues. We are trying now for a pan India reach. We also have a base in Chennai as well. We seek to spread an awareness and education and goodwill in the society in general. And if you want to know more about Doctors for the Cause, then you can please visit any of our social media handles. You'll get all the information. And I'm so glad to be able to be a part of this webinar. And we also want to thank all the other organizations like Doctors for the Cause and EmoSync and Sangati for collaborating with us on this webinar. And we're great to be a part of this team. And let's start the webinar then.
Mhm. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Obi. Ronak, you're here.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, yes. Sorry for the delay. Actually, there was some problem with the device. Actually, I'm very
No
sorry.
problem, Ronak.
So now let's move ahead to the questions that Sir will be taking up.
Mhm.
The
Transfer
questions we
for.
have.
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Please, I have transferred the control to Dr. Tirthankar Gotakurata.
Uh, Hello, sir. So we
Hello.
have a few questions.
Mhm.
Like,
So,
Yes, sir.
Okay. Brief me on what is today's webinar on. What are we focusing on today?
So we are basically focusing on the career uncertainty for the newly graduates. Then there is lack of clinical exposure or skill development for the healthcare students and how to make up for the loss. Lack
Okay.
of motivation to study and uncertainty of examination dates. Then there we come to cancellation of foreign examinations, leading to immense pressure on students who had prepared for the exams for a very long time.
I see.
Then
So
the
there are
next,
so many vital topics coming up. So let's get
yeah,
started. Yeah, yeah.
sure, sure. We then have there is a lack of interaction between students and teachers and the challenge of online education. Then unavailability of network gadget facilities for some and network disturbances for those who cannot afford. So that's all we have for now. So let's get started then, sir.
Yeah, sure. So before we start, can we do the demographic check because we need to know what audience we are speaking to. Saurav, if you very quickly do a demography check, we will publish a few polls on the age, gender, sexuality, educational qualification, and other issues. So let us be very prompt, participate in these polls, and that will give us some insight as to whom we are talking to, so that we can tailor our discussion to the needs of those who are here today. So, Shora, please publish the demographic polls.
Sure. And also, this poll is totally anonymous, so there is no problem regarding your identity.
Okay. So, currently we are running a poll on the stream that best describes your subject. People are still answering.
I think the age. I think. Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
The age poll is live. I think people have answered the poll, sir.
Yeah. People have answered the subject poll, I think. 23 people have answered. So, we have
Uh,
13% of people who are from the humanities, 12% from basic or applied science, 4% from engineering, 68% from healthcare, and 4% from others. Okay. So I think the second poll is also live now. That is based on age. 26 people have answered. So 96% of our audience today are below 25 years of age, and 25 to 35 is 4%. Okay. So can we do a gender and sexuality poll as well?
yes. First,
Yeah, the gender poll is on. Please participate. We have 27 people, 28 people have answered. And today we have 79% of the audience as female and 21% as male. Okay. Um, the sexuality poll is also on. 23 people have answered. 83% identify as heterosexual and 17% as others. Can we have the poll related to disability?
yes.
So 4% of the audience says that they belong to some disability category. 96% say that they do not. The second poll related to disability. So 63% of the audience wants to know about different kinds of disabilities. Can we have the poll related to the maximum educational qualification? So far, we have 25 persons responding. 8% of our audience have the qualification of 10 plus, 52% are 12 plus, 28% are degree or diploma student or completed their studies, 7% are doing post-graduation or completed post-graduation, 4% are doing doctoral or postdoctoral or have completed them or above. So we have a quite almost normally distributed educational demographic today. So I think the polls are done. We can directly go on to the questions, right, Shurab?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Ronak, so what is your first question?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
So, first question that we have here is,
I cannot hear you, sorry.
so
Are you there?
hello, hello.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, how will the new education policy affect academics and career?
Talking about the new education policy, see, it's only at the policy stage, it's not yet implemented, and no such rules or acts have been made as such out of that. Now, since today's audience is a very mixed bag of audience, where we have those who have just completed their class 10 examination, those who are doing their postdoctorals or post graduations. So it's very important to see how the new academic pursuit of this policy is going to affect various stages of the education. Now, Ronak, it's very important to understand that the kind of education that we were having from, say, the 1980s onwards, through the National Policy for Education, that the aim of that education policy was primarily to make education accessible to everyone. That was the motto with which the previous education policy was operating. So it was accessibility and equity that were the most important parameters, not quality. And which seems quite practical, because unless things are accessible, talking about quality is actually very utopian. So now that, uh, although there are areas where we need to access, where equity is needed, where we need to reach, it is also the time that we start thinking about investing both financially and intellectually to the quality of education. So this education policy uh, emphasizes more on the quality than only on the number of people reached through academics. And if you see, it follows a very Western or almost American way of organizing the education. If you ask me what are the salient differences that we are going to see in the coming years once it starts getting implemented, this is for the first time that the public education or the government education is acknowledging the necessity of a preschool. So far, preschool has been a privilege that was only enjoyed by students belonging to the affluent class. They could afford the private schools where preschooling was done. But now it is the government institution and the policy that recognizes preschooling as a very important part of the education system, that prepares you, that primes you for attending the school. And if this is implemented properly, we do not know how this is going to be implemented. This will be extremely beneficial because it also would come with added protection for the children. Because going to the school also means getting access to a safe space, a safe surrounding, and food. So if it is actually implemented properly, then this is going to be actually great. Second important thing that you see in the uh, school level academics that they have proposed is that up to a certain level, like class 5, subjects will be taught in vernaculars or in mother tongue. Now, this may have different kinds of repercussion. We do not know what kind of emphasis we are going to put on English that is usually needed for international studies, for going abroad, and also for communication across a very culturally and linguistically diverse country. But if we see that English as a subject is also taught well, and parallelly we are understanding the subjects in vernaculars, I don't think that will be a major disadvantage. From my own experience, I'm telling you, when I used to study in my school, I had a very peculiar system way back in the late 80s and the early 90s. When I was in the school, in our school, from class 1 to class 4, we used to study both English and Bengali, or Hindi and English, as first languages. And the subjects were taught in our mother tongue. So by the time I was in class 4, I have already mastered the art of understanding English, and I have understood the concept of the subject in Bengali. So from class 5 onwards, all subjects were again switching back into the English language medium. So I did not find it very difficult. I found it was much easier for me to comprehend. This is actually not a very new system. This system has been in the education system in private sector for a long time, and now that kind of a model is being implemented in the public sector as well. Secondly, the evaluation of a student will be based on the holistic development. That means, in earlier times, maybe if you score a good mark in history or mathematics, you will become a good boy or a good girl in the eye of the teacher. Parallelly, if you also know some extracurricular activities, like if you can sing well, if you can play a guitar, if you are good in sports, if you're good in debate, then you have the extra advantage of being someone who is considered intelligent or bright, but that doesn't add to your academic career. But here in this education system, equal weightage is given to all activities, whether it is your interaction with others, the interpersonal relationship, your communication skill, your extracurricular activities, and your curricular activities. All are given equal weightage, and the score or the grade that you get becomes a summation of everything. So, this distinction between what is in the curriculum and what is out of the curriculum, and the tendency to mug up or be guided by a printed curriculum, is probably going to disappear if it is implemented in the proper way. Also, you see that when choosing the higher studies in this new system, there will be no distinction, hardcore distinction between science, arts, and commerce. So the streams can be interchanged. You can choose subjects from individual streams. You can major in something while studying the other thing. And a multidisciplinary integrated approach is going to develop. This is important not only for research and a global development, it is also important to do away with the unnecessary toxic hierarchy system that we have, that people studying science are better than those who are studying humanities. These kind of perceptions are there in the mind of people, and these have been nurtured for a long time. If you ask me whether they are also partially true, the answer is no, they are not. I have been a teacher for so many years, and I have seen innumerable science students who do not have the aptitude of studying science. I have seen innumerable humanities students in my family, in my friends, or while in private, as I was a child, I was also teaching Bengali. I found there are people without proper linguistic skills, proper analytical skills. They are studying humanities. And so you know that the performance that you rate from a pinpointed periodical examination is very far away from assessment of aptitude of an individual person. For example, if you study the last 10 years question of a particular subject, prepare them well, you will be assured to get around 65 to 70% marks. That does not mean that your conception is 70% or 60% of what is expected to be. It doesn't really imply that. So this whole system is fallacious. Maybe there is a student whose conception is actually more clear, who is more analytical in approach, but has never studied the last 10 years question. So he or she never studied what was supposed to be studied. He or she studied what they wanted to study. That never came in the examination. And so the assessment proved that he or she is not a very good student. So I think this kind of biases will be done away with the new education system, provided they are implemented in the right way. Coming to the higher studies, for those of us who are in the UG level or in the PG level or the doctoral level, or those who are doing a professional undergraduate course like healthcare related courses like MBBS, BDS, or engineering related courses. The proposal is that the bachelor's course will be of either 3 years or 4 years duration. 4 years courses will have a 3 year of training plus 1 year of research. 3 years courses will be 3 years of training. And after the bachelor's course is completed, masters can be done in any other discipline or related discipline. Masters will be 1 year for those who have already done 1 year of research, and will be 2 years for those who have done a 3 year bachelor course. The subjects can be chosen in an interdisciplinary manner. So you don't have to stick to a particular type of combination like physics, chemistry, biology. It doesn't have to be like that. So, for example, you can choose physics, biology, and mathematics as your main subjects, and parallelly, you can major in either music or psychology or anthropology. That can be your subject combination. You can wish to study history and political science, and with this you can take up mathematics or statistics, and later on you can do quantitative analysis of various kinds of historical data that we have. So interdisciplinary work will probably rise, while it also does not rule out that it can be misused by some people. But the advantage of this kind of an education is, see, the way we have already always seen education is the way the Britishers introduced the education system to us. And understand that in a colonial country, the need for a Western education was to create more skilled laborers for them. They can be doctors, they can be engineers, they can be clerks. They are people who are skilled enough to carry out their orders or serve them. That was the purpose of the previous education system. So it's good that we are at least moving away from an education system that is only intended to create skilled labor, but is also intended to create thought processes, to generate new ideas. So only time will say whether this will be practicable or it will be implemented the way it has been designed. But I personally find that if we are fruitful enough, if we are creative enough, and also open enough, this is going to bring a lot of good changes in the education. Ronak.
Hello, sir. I hope that will give our audience a much clearer idea of what this new education policy is like, for it came up really suddenly. So, I have another question. The present circumstances, although we have a lot of time, most students still do not get that urge to really be into studies since the quarantine began. Would you like to say anything what to do about it, or whether it is fine or not? Any motivation or anything?
Yeah, true. There has been a lack of motivation, not only from the student side, also from the teacher's side. The demotivation, I think, is also globally affecting people. See, the way we get motivated, the motivation system of the brain relies on reward systems. So something that gives you a social reward or a psychological reward is something that stimulates you, and it imprints into your mind, forming a cycle, so that you tend to repeat that again and again. So for example, if you play cricket and you get applauded for that, you would love to play cricket once again. If you write something and then you get appreciated for that, then it's also important that you write that quite more often. Now you understand that the social stimuli are very few. We are no longer attending schools and colleges the way we used to attend them earlier. There is no direct interaction with friends, with acquaintances, with teachers. And this lack of communication also means lack of stimuli that tell you whether what you have done is reward worthy or punishment worthy. And this is quite sufficient to cause demotivation, because you're doing something that does not give you any psychological feedback. Also, it's equally important to understand that uh, the way we have been defining productivity, even in the previous educational system, it's something that can be graded and scored. So, like if I ask you that what is your hobby, and you say that I am studying piano, my immediate question will be, where are you studying it? Uh, are you doing any particular structured course? And if so, then what was your result in the last semester? That is the way we are used to count achievement through qualifications, achievement through attainable and demonstrable goals. What if the achievement that someone wants to achieve in the life is an inner peace? That's far more valuable than something material that you can obtain. And it's not something to be shown. I'm not supposed to go around and show others how peaceful I'm at mine. Suppose your goal is to find a good, harmonious relationship in family or outside or among the friends or in the romantic side, whatever it is, and you have found that and you are content. That is also an achievement. But this is not an achievement that can be graded or scored, and therefore is never counted as an achievement. To become a balanced human being, a happy human being, to be in touch with your own self is a great achievement that many big achievers fail to do. There are people who are struggling with their own relationship in family, in workplace, people who are not respected as good human beings, but they have good qualifications. So, what is the meaning of such an achievement? uh, we are happy that the education system is shifting from such a goal oriented productivity definition. And also, your inner happiness should not be linked to your only being productive in the eyes of others, because at the end of the day, it is your own life. So, suppose I can be happy if I achieve something, but if I do not achieve something in the eye of the others, does it justify to be unhappy? Is my existence not something sufficient enough to make me happy? And if it is not, then we really need to reconnect with our own self. You will see many people saying that they feel very lonely when they are alone. You can be alone, but that does not mean you should be lonely, because you are also in contact with your own self. I might sound something very philosophical and superfluous, but trust me, it is very healthy to speak to yourself. You should take some time out, you should talk to yourself. And this kind of self conversation is very healthy for development of your own sense of superego, your own sense of what is good and what is bad, your own sense of whether something is good or something is bad. So, your own morality, your own ethics build up with self conversation. And I think this kind of achievements are also achievements. These kind of productivities are also good productivity. You don't have to be always certified by others in order to be productive. Ronak.
Yes, sir. I'm having one more question. I am a drop year student. I am really tensed about the NEET exam, which has not been postponed by the Supreme Court and is about to happen on an offline platform with the burden of pandemic on our shoulders. And everything adds up to the fact that it is already my drop year.
Okay, so can you come again with the question? Where exactly is the dilemma? I did not understand.
So the individual is a drop year student, and because the NEET and the JEE exams are not postponed due even though there's a pandemic going on, The future is really scary. One for the pandemic, because of the physical, the exam will be taken up with their physical presence, and about the exam. And also the other fact which adds up is the fact that it is a drop year.
I understand. Yeah, that
I
can
think,
be
sir,
really stressful. And I will not sugarcoat it by saying that this is something that you have to deal with. It is indeed a very difficult situation.
I
And
think, sir, hello.
yes,
Sir, I think there is another question on the same line that
okay, sure.
the date of NEET UG being postponed for a long time now. A recent suicide of an aspirant in Coimbatore has been reported. Being a NEET aspirant myself, I would like to know what is your take on NEET UG aspirants' mental health.
Okay, this is a wonderful question. See, coming to this whole examination issue amidst this pandemic, uh, at times we have to make statements that are, in a way, like taking sides or being political, because you have to take a stand. So maybe here I will take my own personal stand, which other people may not agree to. I personally believe that when a pandemic like this is taking away lives, it's absolutely unnecessary to take physical examination. That is totally my point of view. The reason is that giving so much importance to written and face to face examination only undermines the value of someone's life. My student's life cannot be less precious than the mark sheet of my student. But this is exactly what, see, we are coming back to the same issue once again. You have to be certified by someone, you have to prove your productivity to other people. That is what this education system demands from you. And understand that the people who are teaching you right now, many of them, those who are implementing policies, they have been, I will use the word, victims of the previous education system. So they think that this is the normal thing to do. It is normal to ask a student who is very sick to come and give an attendance and attend a physical examination and prove that the person is very studious. So this kind of parameters of being a good student, likened to ignoring one's own physical and mental health, has always been there in schools and colleges. I think you also have faced the same kind of thing. Hmm. So, to be very honest with you, I personally feel this is a very poor decision making at some end. Yes, quality control is needed in examinations. It is, of course, true. And quality control should be there. Otherwise, particularly professional courses, when they will give away the degrees, then the service to the community may suffer. But the quality control should come in such a way that the person who is being evaluated is also equally respected. So I think that should be there. Now, coming back to what can be the solution. Honestly, we are in a situation where we do not know what is next. And uh, regarding the NEET examinations, both UG and PG, we do not know when that can be conducted physically. We do not know what will be the format if it has to be conducted. Because getting so many people together, getting an auditorium ready with so many computers, and maintaining personal hygiene in this time of pandemic, that is a very big task. So I just wish that things will be done in a safe way. So for the students, I will say, forget that we are in a pandemic. Study as you are studying and do not overstress yourself. Because understand that whatever happens will happen to all of us. If the examination is postponed, it will be postponed for every one of us. And that will not be considered to be a drop of a year. You think in this way that this year is getting, in a way, wasted in the history of earth. No time in the last 200, 300 years we have seen in our civilization a crisis as big as this. So it is something that we cannot compare with anything. Understand this also. So, from the policymakers' point of view, also, they have never been exposed to a challenge as big as this. I have heard the most senior most of the teachers, of my teachers, who are uh, octogenarians or nanogenarians now, they are also saying that we have never seen something like this. So, we don't have a model to follow. So, everyone is trying to help in their own way, probably, guided by their own sense of justice, at the same time, their own prejudices. So we can just wait and watch. You do your own study at home and let's see what comes out of it. I just wish that We will be developing immunity very soon through vaccination or other good measures, and maybe the examination can be postponed until the community gains good immunity. But let's hope for that. Ronak.
So there's this question. Since we have more free time, which is 24 hours, does it mean I should study more? Because I am trying because I want to, but it's not happening, which really puts me down. So, any advice?
No, you don't have to. I can share with you my own experience of when I was a student. Um, Getting more time never translated into studying more. The actual time when you really study a lot at a higher pace, at an accelerated pace, is the night before the examination. And I think that is the story with everyone. So, unless you get some kind of an impetus or propulsion to study, just getting some time does not translate into studying. Also, I would say that is not a very healthy behavior. Yes, you can use that time studying whatever you like, not necessarily whatever you are told to study. This can be very paradoxical coming from me because I keep on forcing my own students to study, because I told you that force has to be there. If I don't force you, you will not study. But if I don't force you and you are still studying and not doing anything else, I will not appreciate that, because that was also the time when you could have watched a film. That was also the time when you could have done something that you love to do. And now, if it is such that you love to study your own curricular subjects, then that is okay. But then, in that case, you will not ask me this question. You will, as it is study. So, if you like those books as very good books to read, you can. But otherwise, getting more time does not necessarily mean you have to study more, because that is again subscribing to the model of productivity that we have. That this study is probably going to get you a good grade. That is a demonstrable achievement, and therefore it becomes your productivity. And if you spend this time listening to music, talking to friends, reconnecting with old relationships, that is not scoreable, that is not gradable, and therefore that is not productivity. So I fail to subscribe to this kind of models of productivity. So absolutely, there is no need to study more because you are getting more study time. But of course, you can study in the interim time. And if someone is forcing you to study, it is only because in this time, without force, you cannot study. That's quite normal.
I hope that helps the one who asked the question. So, now we have the next question. Many people lack the gadgets, network facilities, and are unable to attend the online classes. They are tensed about missing classes, but the university are not really paying any heed. Can you please give your opinion on this?
This is a very important issue that I think we should always address. Uh, and the teachers should also keep in mind that not everyone is privileged enough to have a very good internet connection. We are going through a time when there is not only this attack of this pandemic or financial crisis that people are going through, there is also there are also natural disasters happening here and there. So connectivity is getting disrupted. People are losing home. Some people are not getting food, and expecting people to attend classes regularly, barring these very basic necessities, is something very inhuman. So I think this is in the hand of the educational system, the schools or the colleges, and also the individual teachers. We can do something about this. One way to go about this is to not only restrict your education or delivery to only live online sessions. You should also have offline classes that can be accessed when the network is better. So, just giving an example, apart from a live lecture on Zoom, you should also make classes available maybe in the Google Classroom. Or you should also have typed and printed PDFs that can be shared through WhatsApp, which people can access at their own end. You should also ask your students if everyone has a smartphone. And if someone doesn't have, it is your responsibility to arrange for it. If the teacher cannot buy it, the teacher can contact various organizations and NGOs who are willing to give handy gadgets to the students. But without ensuring that everyone has the access to education, making a particular form of education mandatory is highly discriminatory. I am not against online education, but I am for online education for all, not online education for few. So this has been a very emergency situation. It was not planned. We had to adopt the online method. But there should be other ways round too. I'm just giving you an example of something I do with one group of my students. In our colleges, in our medical colleges, we also have to give classes to students who are not MBBS. So, like the technicians, they do classes. The students of physiotherapy or uh, operation theater technology, they also do classes. Not all of them come from a family that they can afford a smartphone. So we have an alternative method of dealing with it. We upload our lectures or PowerPoints through emails and Google Classroom. Anyone who lives close to the friend who does not have access to this modality takes a printout and give them. And I conduct the classes over normal manual phone call. They open the slides are numbered. So in the phone, going to the speaker mode, in the conference mode, I say, so now coming to slide number 3, and they open slide number 3. And then I discuss the topic. That is also an alternative way of teaching. So there are different ways of teaching. Recently, there has been a proposal that there will be a broadcast system of teaching, teaching through mics or teaching through radio channels. I think these are also something that we should actively start thinking about, improvising, and taking time out to find, because holding classes only through a fast internet connection, through a audiovisual live mode, cannot be the only way education can be done. And if it has to be the only way, then everyone should have access to it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering this question. Uh, so there is another question: how to keep myself self-motivated? I am not getting the urge to study, and I am postponing my work.
This lack of motivation, we discussed this in our previous webinar also, so I'm just summarizing. One way of dealing with this is to make a routine. So instead of making a weekly routine, you make a list of things to cover in 1 week. And every morning after getting up, you choose any two activity out of that. Once you finish the two activities, choose the third activity for the day. And it goes on like that. That way, you never procrastinate and your schedule do not become unnecessarily delayed and ultimately cancelled. So, like, suppose there are 10 things to do this week in your academics, you list them down. Today morning, you choose any two out of that. Do not choose the third topic until the first two have been totally finished. And that way, you will reach your deadline. Gradually, your number of activity per day will increase. That is, the rate of the efficiency of your system will increase. And I think this will keep you busy and productive.
I think, sir, on the previous question, there are few things if you discuss. Like, I understand that we all have our own kind of problems, and we need to deal with that. There is no comparison. But also, the kind of privilege we have, that we are having this video conference today, that webinar today, that we have. You are answering these questions and we are listening to it, the kind of privilege we have technically and economically, also taking the accountability of that, and to the all those other people who are not present here today because of their technical problems, so that they can afford this kind of privileges. So I think, sir, on that line, if you say few things, like how much privilege we have, and we should take the accountability of all these things that these people cannot afford.
True. Actually, the because we are all here today, sitting in front of some kind of a transmission device, and we are talking to each other, seeing each other, means we already have a lot of privilege. That is undeniable. Now, having a privilege is not a crime, but not acknowledging it is something very inhuman. So we have to acknowledge that we are getting 2 square meal every day. We have a place to call home. It has not been washed away or broken down by Amphan. We have friends to connect. We have family members still living. We have the option of buying food and storing it at home and maybe not visiting crowded places. We have the option of sitting in front of a screen and either distribute or receive education. We have the option of buying things online and getting paid online. All these are extreme privileges. So I don't think at any point we should not acknowledge these privileges. Now, just cut down one of these privileges out of it, and you see how your life becomes more difficult. And now think of people who do not have any of this. So, of course, we are more privileged. And again, being more privileged does not mean you have to be more productive, but being more privileged definitely means you have to be more sensitive. There are things that we can do without, and if that can be shared with some people, and that is what we should learn during this pandemic. Such empathetic sharings and connections can be easily built. If you think that you have the ability to arrange for meals, four square meal for all family members, then you can actually have three square meal, and one of the meal can be given to someone in need. You can share your meal. If you think that you have the privilege of keeping a dog well groomed in your home, you can also feed that one very apparently unhealthy dog who is sitting outside your home in the rain. If you have the privilege of having an iPhone, then you can use your old mobile phone that has been gathering dust for a long time. You can revamp it, spend about 100, 200 rupees and make it workable and give it to a person who needs it for education. So these are also small things we can do without spending a fortune. It only needs an initiative. And maybe the pandemic is a good time that we can learn such empathetic sharing. I'm repeating again, being not privileged is something very sad. But being privileged is not a crime. But being privileged gives you the scope to be empathetic. And not being empathetic in that sense, even if it's not a crime, it's something not very virtuous also. So if you have the privilege, it's okay that you have the privilege. But then learn to broaden your table and share your meal with others instead of making big fences. So this is also what we can not only learn but teach people, teach every other family member, not necessarily the younger ones, that this is something that we should do during this time. Sure.
Yes, Ronak has some questions. Yes, Ronak, go ahead.
Hello. Yes. So this question states, I am a final year medical student.
Hmm.
I might get called up anytime, even during the pandemic, for clinical duties, even without any clinical knowledge.
Hmm.
How am I supposed to handle it?
I think I'm just responding from what I know. If students who are not medical graduates are called for medical service, that will be optional and paid as well. As it is optional, you always have the option of not joining. This is not true for people who have already passed. But for those who have not passed, they will be given a training before they attend the wards, and their joining will be totally optional. Maybe those who join will get some privilege, like some months of internship, they have to do less, and they will also be paid. But those who will not join will not be punished. So this is the model that I have heard from the university. So if at all it is implemented, you will have an option of not joining also. And if you do join, you will be trained about the safety measures, the use of the personal protective equipments, and the responsibilities that you have to take up. And of course, you don't have to take up clinical responsibility. You'll be given responsibilities that are more learnable in that small period of time. That is what probably the health system is now thinking of. I hope this
Thank
answers
you,
your
sir.
question.
Thank you. So that was really quite informative. The next question which we have here is, JU has the Jadavpur University has given its student 800 phones and internet connections and showed the way that university should do this. So, any
What is the
opinion on this?
question? Yeah,
JU has
that is absolutely commendable. That is what I was talking about right now. So I don't consider this to be a great job done by JU. It looks great because others do not even do that, and JU has done that, and that way it is actually commendable. Every university should do this. The universities are way richer than individual students. The university is a funded organization, and some students do not have a place to stay. So what JU has done is wonderful, but that is something which I believe everyone should do. So I absolutely appreciate what JU has done. And although I appreciate, I would say that this is something that university is supposed to do in a time like this. And if other universities are not doing things like this or not taking initiatives like this, It is really pathetic on their part.
Thank you, sir. The next question that we have here: final year students are having to go back to college during this time. This is creating a tension and a panicky situation at home and getting the students all worked up. So, can you, sir, please give any advice to someone who is actually going through this?
True. I think there is a question quite related to this also. A question came like this in the inbox. Uh, Medical students have lost clinical practice skills. How can they cover up for it, or even if they don't, it will have an effect on the kind of doctor they will become?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the two questions are related. You understand that it's important to have clinical exposure. You also are panicked because the clinical exposure means exposure to the COVID infection as well. So it's a two-way sword, and you have to choose somewhere in between. So now, coming to this issue, again, I am just sharing my own perspective on this. Uh, I personally believe that yes, clinical skills are absolutely needed to become a doctor. But here comes a few very important punchlines. I might be sharing some very unpopular opinions, but I'm just sharing what is very true. Just like all subjects, all other subjects, of all the students who pass out, you will see there are 20% who would anyways pass even without any guidance. They are good in their own way, they have mastered the subject, or they have a natural aptitude for the subject. There will be another about, say, 50% or more, or 60%, who need some guidance, but with that guidance, they will excel, they will pass. And there are another 20% for whom maybe the subject is not made. I'm not saying they are bad students. Maybe they somehow landed up in this profession or in this subject, and subject was not meant for them. Maybe they could have been good musicians. Maybe they are excellent mathematicians. They just ended up in a wrong subject and now regretting their decision. Sometimes they need a push, and they have to be pushed to pass. And as a teacher, I have to deal with all kinds of students. All of them are my students. There is no distinction between them. Without distinguishing between them, therefore, it also implies not everyone who passes out of a course is a wonderful clinician. Try to admit that. Even without knowing good clinics, people pass. And knowing wonderful clinics, people do not get good marks. That is the fallacy of the education system. Now, coming to what kind of doctor they will become. I personally believe in a situation like this, where the pandemic has taken such a proportion that the student can die, there is no harm in delaying the academic session by 1 year. Or even if we do not delay, we can at least make mandatory post internship posting in certain departments so that the skills are learned. Because it is not necessary that you have to learn first and then pass, and the other way around cannot be done in a situation of emergency. There are different emergencies that can happen. So it is an emergency situation and it deserves improvisation. If, as a teacher, I care for my students, I will behave with them the way I will behave with my own siblings or with my own children. I do not want my child to stand in front of a COVID positive patient even before passing out as a doctor. Then, how can I, as a teacher, expect my students to stand in front of a COVID positive person just because they are not my own children? I think that is a very selfish way of looking into it. There are various ways of learning clinical skills. There are various ways of learning theoretical skills. Even theoretical skill cannot be learned properly through online education. There are disadvantages to that. The communication skill, the interpersonal skills, eye contact, body gesture, these are also parts of learning. Online education does not teach you that. So it is not only practical education that is getting affected, it is also theoretical education. It is education to become a good person that is also getting affected. Just imagine what kind of things you learn when you are in any class, any subject, any standard, uh, any class. In that class, if someone misbehaves, you always look at how the teacher behaves, how the teacher manages the situation. If someone is weak, you see and analyze how the teacher is behaving with that weak student. Is the teacher being vindictive? Is the teacher being critique? Or is the teacher being more helpful? So, suppose there is a student who underwent a vasovagal attack, a sudden fainting in the class. So does the teacher say that, okay, this person has fainted, you take him or her out, we'll continue with the class? Or does he or she postpone the class, take care of the student, and let things get back to normal before the class starts? These are life skills that we learn. A class on mathematics, a class on language, a class on medicine is not just a class on medicine. It's also a class on human interaction. It's a class to learn how situations are dealt with. Of course, you, like any of us, compare teachers. You sometimes would say that this teacher is more sensitive and this teacher is very rude. This comparison creates in your mind your own model of ethics. I'm not saying that someone is actually good and someone is actually bad. At least you have the choice of selecting some attributes as good and selecting some attributes as bad. That is also part of education. So just to think that it is only practical skill that is getting affected is also a very reductionist view of education. Thinking that theory can be learned from book and practical has to be learned through hands. It can be the opposite way also. Practical can also be learned by advanced audiovisual tools. Theory can also be learned face to face. So it is true that overall education is getting affected, not only practical skill. And when everything can wait, even the practical skills, I believe, can wait. We can wait, train them later, let them be safe, learn whatever kind of skill and knowledge is probably teachable through online portals, and leave the remaining theoretical and practical for a later exposure after maybe we have a successful vaccine. So that can always be done. In the 1970s, when the political scenario in Bengal was very uh, unfavorable for formal education, MBBS course was delayed for 2 years. So at that time, MBBS course was 6 years, not the 4.5 year that we have now. And I remember one of my teacher who was a pass out of the Calcutta University from Medical College, Kolkata. So he said that without failing, passing everything at first chance, he and his entire batch passed the MBBS course in 8 years. So things can wait. These are emergencies where living is more important, surviving is more important than just gaining a qualification. That is my take on the situation.
It is very truly said, sir. I hope that helps our audience. Let's now move on to the next question that we have. Some colleges are conducting supplementary exams during this time despite the pandemic, and all the students have to go and write, and there are no considerations for students with low immunity and other health issues. This is a very difficult situation. Particularly, we also have AIMS Kalyani here that has declared offline exams from September. So, would you like to throw any light on this?
Yeah, this is quite unfortunate. That is all we can say. It is in reflection with the previous questions only. I just wish that we could follow a more modern system of education that the new model is proposing. So, like students could postpone their career for some time and come back with the stored credits at any point of time and start from where they left. I just wish it was like this. Now, commenting on these kind of decisions is actually futile because I'm not a decision maker. So uh, I believe that people who make decision think a lot before taking a decision, and they will really care for the safety of the children. The social distancing will be maintained, their hygiene will be maintained. That's all I can hope for. But this is not something very ideal, I will expect.
So, what is the difference between the knowledge oriented and exam oriented studying?
It is essentially the difference between realization and memorizing. So essentially that. You know that when you study something, you have to develop some preliminary notions. These are your axioms. Over the axioms, you build up your assimilated data, your interconnected derivations, which are your theorems and corollaries, and then you apply them in your life. That is true for any kind of subject. Now, when your knowledge becomes totally axiom oriented, where the application part is missing, that becomes something which does not require much of analytical skill. Say, for example, if I talk of an exam oriented study and uh, knowledge oriented study. A knowledge oriented study in any subject, say, for example, medicine, a knowledge oriented study will be to put you in a clinical situation for 7 days, observe how you deal with the situation, and deal with the patient, come up with a diagnosis and treatment. Parallelly, to test your theoretical knowledge, we can give you the chance to teach some younger students and test them pre test and post test to see the effectiveness of your dissemination of knowledge. Now, compare this with what we actually do. So, you understand the difference between knowledge based education and knowledge based education enriches you, and examination oriented education burdens you. So if there is an examination coming and you think that how am I going to deal with this examination? I'm not prepared. It means that the examination is essentially examination oriented. That is why you are burdened. Had it been knowledge oriented, you would be more happy because you have already gained that through your day to day experiences. So, knowledge oriented education multiplies. So, suppose there are certain amount of information that you have in physiology and some information that you have in pathology and some in medicine. You can interrelate them in all possible web manner and get a greater dimension of insight. But when you learn things in pieces, then you just add them, you don't multiply them. And the total amount of education that you get is much less than you could get with the same effort. So, this is essentially the difference between the two.
Thank you, sir. Uh, so this one, the next question we are having is really important, I feel. It is from a 30-year-old. Uh, he is saying that I lost my job due to the pandemic at an MNC. How am I supposed to deal with it? I have no other earning member in my family.
This is really a difficult situation. It will be easier to know if I can understand what is his or her qualification and the sector that he or she used to work in. Is it possible to know? Or maybe I'm leaving this question open. He or she can answer. We can go to the next question until he or she answers.
All right, sir. So the next question that we have here is, so how much do you believe in the concept of rewarding yourself based on your productivity in studies? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think sir having some network issues. Yeah.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So, can I get the question
Right.
once again?
Sure, sir. Sure. So, how much do you believe in the concept of rewarding yourself based on your productivity in studies?
See, rewarding is something that you do in your own way. So you know what you like. I personally believe that uh, accomplishing something that you love itself is a reward. If you love it, only when you don't love it that much, you need an external reward for it. That is not bad. That is another way of getting yourself motivated. Just give you an example. Suppose there is a person who loves solving problems related to integral calculus. So every time the person is solving the problems of integral calculus, the person is getting rewarded. Now, this person does not require an external reward for that. But maybe the same person does not like reading biology that much. But he also does not hate it that much. So you make a schedule for the biology thing and ask that person to follow that schedule, and each time the person does it in time, you reward that person with something that the person likes. It may not be material, it can be material thing, or it can be like the permission to uh, be online for some time in the studies. It can be the permission to have a fast food. It can be anything that the person likes, which can be emotional, that can be physical, that can be material. So that kind of rewarding often builds up a condition reflex, making you like what you do not like more and more. So rewarding is important because we as human being may not like everything that we have to do in our day-to-day lives. And when you love something, when you like something, be it academics or non-academic, then the activity itself becomes a reward. That is what I feel.
Thank you, sir. The next question is it's again a similar question. I am studying as an MBBS student after completing a graduation in another subject. The pandemic may delay my course considerably, and I am worried how this will impact my future career prospects as an older student.
Probably it won't, to be very honest with you. If you want to get into academics, the higher limit of becoming an assistant professor is 45. So, unless you are 45 or approaching 45 years of age, you can still be an assistant professor. There is no upper age limit or lower age limit for being associate professor and professor. If you do not prefer to be in the teaching profession, if you solely want to be in the practicing profession, there is no age limit for anything. It is your skill, it is your interaction, it is your popularity that matters. And the popularity again depends on your skill, your interaction, and the outcome of your treatment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering this question. We have another question which is a bit intersectional between relationship and education. Uh, the question is, my time with my family is increasing, but at the same time, my relationship with my parents is decreasing, and also my romantic relationship is all over the place. I have important entrance exams coming very soon. What to do?
This is really very difficult. Uh, Maybe you can talk to your family, and if it is possible, find out some segregated time for yourself. Segregated time does not mean you have to have a separate room. If you have a separate room, that's good. If you don't, then at least ask for some private time. You can isolate yourself using earplugs or earphones. Use that time to focus on your own needs, your own wants. You use that time not only for studying, but also take a fixed time of the day out to communicate with your romantic partner. That is very important, because in this pandemic people are having their own schedules. Sometimes we don't have a schedule, making it very difficult as to when to call someone and when to receive the call. If you have at least one fixed time a day, when you will call each other, share your concerns with each other, share what you did all over the day, and the rest of the communication can be spontaneous, then this uh, acts like kind of a uh, routine time that is dedicated to each other's talking. So, although it sounds mechanical initially, but it's not that bad. It's like you are meeting in a tuition and you are talking. The tuition time is fixed. That does not mean that your emotions are fake. So, you can fix at least one time, one fixed time, dedicated time to talk to your romantic partner. And rest of the time, whether you talk or not, that will depend on the circumstances. For family members also, it's important to realize that they need their space, and also you need your space, because we are not used to spend such a long period of time with our parents. Even when we are living with them, we have our office hours, our college hours, they have their own work. Now this extended period of communication often exhausts us, and we do not find anything worthy of communicating. It is important to isolate yourself. Sometimes you can go to the terrace, or you can look out through the window, giving yourself your own time that you need, so that there also builds up certain things that you can talk about and generate a conversation about. So maybe this will help.
Thank you, sir. Uh, so the next question is there's a conflict I'm facing in my relationship with my girlfriend and my career. So, what am I supposed to do?
But the question is too vague to answer. Is the conflict regarding time? Is it because the girlfriend does not want him or her to go into that subject? What kind of or the person has to leave the country? What kind of conflict is the person talking about? So, if the person is more specific, we can talk about this. Now, coming in general to issues like this, where there is on one side your romantic life, on the other side your career, sounds too cinematic, of course, but these can be situations in life where you have to take a choice. Now, if we say that the choice is either this or this, then we are probably doing a logical bias. We are thinking that anything other than the two option is not possible. In such situation, it is very important that you think of other feasible option, the third, fourth, or fifth option, the options of doing the things together, and also understand why the other person is opposing such a move. Is it because of the fear of losing you? Is it because of the ego of you becoming more superior? Or is it because of some other intrinsic bias that the person may have? And your decision will totally depend based on the situation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering this question. Another question is there. It's more like, uh, the question is, I'm coming from an economical backward class and it's hard to continue my education furthermore because of the mode of the education is online. So, what to do?
Yeah, the same thing. I think you should contact your university or any other sensible teacher that you have in your university or college or school and see what they can do. Or otherwise, you can also get in touch with Emosync or DFC, and we can see if this is there is some way to help you out. Because only counseling will not help here. What you are facing here is need for something more material and physical, and it has to be dealt in the same way. If you do not get favorable response from your university, feel free to contact us and we'll try to support you in whatever way possible.
Yes, I would like to encourage that. Uh, who asked this question, that please reach out to us and we'll try to help you as much as possible. And the next question is, sir, is I'm having difficulty between my academics and my hobbies and my passion. I understand the question is a little bit
Yeah, it's too
vague,
vague. I
but
don't understand
yeah,
what to answer here.
the thing is, I think the thing is, there are many aspects to it, but if we can discuss one or two three two things about it, like, probably someone really likes to do something, but they are not inspired enough or motivated enough to do that. And also there is a pressure of academics or career to it, because of the whole situation. Because I know this is not like working from home. This is more like working at home. So, how to deal with this situation regarding their hobbies and passion?
Yeah, we are also getting other questions in the same line, maybe. There is one question in the inbox that reads: has the world got tougher in this pandemic, or is it just me? A student from MBBS last year. Um, it's difficult to say without knowing you, but yeah, the world is tougher. The world has definitely become much more tough in this pandemic for all of us. We are going through a collective catastrophe, a collective distress, and it is the time when we should acknowledge that it has become tough. We should acknowledge it is differently tough for different people, and it's important that we support each other in this journey because that's all we can do to survive. This is a situation where a teacher can scream for not submitting your assignment, but will actually never mentally think that you have failed because it is a time when you can fail. The situations are like that. So it is a time when we can force you to study. But if you don't study, we will not judge you because the situation is tough. We understand that. It is a situation where people are struggling to survive. They are struggling to be as they used to live maybe 1 year ago. And we do not know when things are to quote unquote normalize to the previous pattern or whether this will become the new pattern. So, yes, it is tough. It is tough. It is psychologically tough, financially tough, and it's also physically very tough to live in this situation. I'm glad that you are doing this. I'm glad for everyone who is surviving and helping other people survive. Yes, sure. Any other question?
Hello, sir. The next question is I do not have my books with me. They are all at my hostel, and due to pandemic, I cannot even bring them because my college is in a different state, and I cannot even read the PDFs because reading them for a long time gives me a headache some way or the other. So, can you please help me out?
Now, if all the options are off, I cannot help you out, to be very honest. This is a situation where things are tough. You should be glad that you have a device where ebooks can be read. There are people whose books have been washed away in Amphan. I'm not saying that being more privileged, you deserve a very hard life. That is not what I'm suggesting. But see, the question is set in such a way that all other options are cancelled out. So it's like I don't have the books. I also cannot get the books here. And also, I have the PDFs, but I will not read the PDF. Then don't study. I'm not trying to be rude. Just be practical and understand the situation. It is the time when everyone is adjusting. What you are suffering from is probably is the visual symptoms of online screen watching. When we watch a screen for a long duration, particularly an electronic screen, our blinking rate decreases. As the blinking rate decreases, eyes become dry, and as the eyes become dry, they pain. Also, because of the neck posture that we hold while reading the online devices, or the kind of direction at which you look, all these things matter. So maybe you try to read the PDFs at shorter intervals but at higher frequency. Means many times a day, but not more than 30 minutes at a go. Also, you make small notes, whatever you are studying. So next time you can read from the note, you don't have to get back to the PDF. And it also helps you memorize and conceptualize things. Third, and very importantly, hold your mobile device. I'm showing you. Instead of holding your device in this way, hold your device in this way. The advantage is when your vision axis is downwards, your eyelid partly covers your eye. So the dryness that happens because of less blinking also affects the eye relatively less. So these are the tips and tricks that you can follow, maybe.
There is another question, sir. Sir, can we integrate knowledge oriented learning and exam oriented learning together, since I feel we need to focus on making our concepts? I'm currently in second year MBBS, but we are prone to study just to pass.
Yeah, that is always possible. So that is how it should be. Or probably even the exam oriented study should be out of this altogether. But since the new education policy is not yet implemented, I cannot promote that. Uh, the best way to integrate knowledge is to understand that you can teach that flawlessly to someone. You don't have to know everything about it. But when you are teaching something to someone, you have to be actually double confident than when you are reading it yourself. So, the best way to understand that your knowledge has been internalized, your conception has developed, is that you form a small group among yourself, and each of you from a chapter take a section, and that person will teach that chapter online to the others and give others the complete liberty to ask you question, so that beforehand you will prepare for some of the question, integrating the basics and the applieds, and some questions will be there that you will not be able to answer. They will be your stimulus that you will read up after the session, and so that the next session will be better. That teaching is actually a very good way of learning.
I think, sir, we are almost run out of the time, and we can take one or two more questions. So please, if you have any question, feel free to ask that. We have one more question. I want to go to study abroad, and I was mentally prepared for that. But now I am not able to do that, and I feel like I have missed the opportunity. I have no desire to study further. What to do?
No, it should not be like this. Be glad that you are not abroad or in those countries where the infectivity and the pandemic curve is much more steeper. So, as I would always say, your life is more precious than your qualification. Your qualification will matter if you leave. Otherwise, your qualification will not matter. Stay at home, read, prepare so that you don't forget the skills that you have already acquired. Very soon, things are going to be normal, maybe within 1 year or 2 years. And this delay is a delay that everyone is suffering from. It's not only you. So, there is actually no loss or selective loss that you are incurring. So, be optimistic. Let's hope that a vaccine will come soon. It will save us from being home confined, and we'll get back to the old normal again. So in the interim time, keep in touch with your studies so that you don't forget the skills you have already acquired. Yes, sure.
We do not have any more questions. So I think, sir, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for attending today's session. And we have few announcement from Doctor for Cause, Doctor for Cause, and also Sangati Foundation. So please stay tuned for that. This
So
all are very exciting. Ronak, yes.
Thank you, sir. Those are all the questions that we had. It was really helpful. I hope our audience did get a better view of the whole thing. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think Obhik from Doctor for Cause wants to say something. Obhik, you are there?
Yes, I'm here. Can I please do the screen sharing, please?
Yes. Over to you, Obhik.
Yes. Yes, is the screen visible?
Uh, Wait for a few minutes.
Is it visible
No,
now?
no, it's working actually. It's in the process.
Okay.
Uh, for everyone, please stay tuned. We have few very exciting announcement from Doctor for Cause, Doctor for Cause, and Sangati Foundation. I think Avik, it is taking longer than it should. Uh, I think if you can try once more.
1 second, wait. Uh, is it visible?
No.
We're facing some technical difficulties.
Yeah, I think there are some technical glitches. You can announce anyway. You can announce what you need to say.
Acha, is the camera on? Am I visible?
No, it's you are not visible. I think your camera is off.
Problems.
Please turn on the camera.
Yeah, the mic is on. Wait. It's the camera. Yeah, it's the camera. Yeah. So, hi everyone. So, Doctors for a Cause, we are organizing a quiz. It's called Social Quiz Tensing, which will be held on the 28th and the 29th of August. Uh, Due to the technical glitch, I'm not being able to show you the poster on the screen. So, this is the poster. I hope you guys can see it. It's been sponsored by PLA Remedies, and I'm really sorry that I can't show you show you on the screen, but the it's on the 28th and 29th of this month, and the last date for registration is 25th, 6 p.m. You can log in into you can go to any social media site like Facebook and Instagram for more about this. So the quiz will be held online on WhatsApp and Zoom. The things are all given on the poster, and there's a registration fee. I think it's 70 rupees for single registration and 140 for two people. And it's a clinical quiz, medical quiz. So I'm hoping you all are very excited, especially since we have a medical based audience. So we are hoping to see you guys there, and our sponsor is PLA Remedies. So yeah, let's hope we can see you guys there, and we have tons of fun. Like organizing the quiz. Thank you.
Ovik, I would say if you can share the details in chat box so that people can register.
Yeah, I'll share the details on the chat box, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ovik.
Yeah.
Next, I think Sangati Foundation. Hello.
Transfer control to me or something?
Yes, yes. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. This is Alka from Sangati Foundation. And Good to hear, all the questions and their answers. I would like to take you through a brief of what Sangati does so that you are. Is my screen or the presentation visible? Can others see this?
No, it's not visible.
Yeah.
It's actually in the process, but I fear it's taking a bit too long.
No, it's not visible.
Okay. Okay. Um, so while this gets visible, let me talk to you about what it is. Sangati works for persons with disabilities, and we work towards the accessibility, mobility, inclusivity, and visibility. Visibility is very important because unless you see people with disability around you, you are not able to realize that what their need is. The empathy goes missing. So that is what we focus on. We try to include them in our society so that their special needs are not ignored. We do exist on all kinds of platforms. www.sangati.org, that's our website. We run a toll-free number where people can call, tell us about their difficulties, and we find solutions for that. We run a lot of events which help in talent promotion, providing platform for people with disability having different skill sets and arts and culture and all that. We are also doing a lot of advocacy. We design solutions using the technology, around the health platforms, around artificial intelligence, around structural changes, and all of that. There's a lot of skill development going on online, and in fact, I'm thankful to the Corona, um, let's say, normal. Uh, for people to become more comfortable with online learning, that is something which is helping people become very included in the society for learning. Otherwise, disabled people find difficulty in finding accessible colleges and accessible places to reach out to. There are special schools, yes, but those special schools are not far and wide. So when we teach people online, it becomes available to people all around the country. So if you have, if you're aware of friends or relatives who might need such skill development courses, they are free of cost with Sangati bearing everything. Please let us know. And all our, digital platform presence is available on the website also. So they can all join us. So that'll be great. I don't know if the presentation is already visible or not. I'm assuming it isn't, so I'm spelling everything out.
It is. I think the platform is having some technical glitches.
Okay,
It's not
okay,
working.
okay, okay, okay. So I'll stop sharing. There's no point in sharing if it's not visible. But I hope I was able to explain what we do, and it'll be great if we are, if we are able to reach out to more people through this platform. I also invited a lot of people with, who are giving care to people with learning disabilities, and there is a specific problem which these kids face because their routine is broken. I'm sure Dr. Thakurta would know that a lot of reliance is placed on repetition of a particular activity. If the routine gets disturbed, they do get very, very uh, anxious overall, and that is something which we are trying to address through various means. So this webinar helps a lot in addressing these issues specifically. If if any of you, any of the attendees have these issues in general, please spell them out while filling the form, even for our subsequent sessions. And I'm sure you would get a wonderful insight into how to tackle these things. Thank you so very much for attending, and thank you for giving us this opportunity, everyone else. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining our hand to help people. Next is Dr. for pause. I think Rupkotha, you are you there? Hello, Rupkata, am I audible?
Hello.
Yes, Rupkata, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead. We are having some problems with this sharing our screen, so I think if you can please go ahead with the details of Dr. for pause.
Okay. So I'll just begin. I'm Rupkatha, co-founder of Doctors for Paws. So DFP is a non-profit organization co-founded by 5 medical students of KPC, all of who are animal lovers. From buying fluorescent collars for accident-prone dogs to arranging for treatments of injured dogs and also conducting mass deworming, vaccination programs, DFP is a small endeavor to make the lives of the neglected dogs on the street a bit joyful and easier. We are also stressing on adopt, don't shop presently, taking up the adoptions of dogs and cats, ensuring them a forever loving home. And all our groundwork presently revolves around the strays within the campus. There are around 40 dogs, which is also a huge number. In the future, however, with enhanced resources and connectivity, we plan on expanding further, definitely. We are presently also taking in donations for neuter or spay drive of the dogs within the KPC campus, of course. And in the first round, we have decided to neuter at least the females, and there will be around 4 male dogs who will be neutered. So you can also help us and make this venture a success. And we are also active on various social media accounts like Facebook, Instagram, where we give updates about our groundwork and try creating awareness about various issues through posts. So do follow and share. I think the links are provided in the chat box. And if you want to reach out to us, please do email at doctorsforpaws@gmail.com. So that's it.
Thank you, Rupkata. Thanks a lot for sharing your details. And as Tirthanga sir correctly mentioned that about the new normal and the challenges we are facing. So we will be back next weekend with our new kind of programs, new kind of episodes regarding the other problems we have been facing through this pandemic and this new normal, because this uncertainty is the only certainty that we have currently. So we have decided that we will run this program through the last week of August and also the September. So please stay tuned and register for our other episodes, other new programs. And thanks a lot for joining today. And thank you, Sangati Foundation, Doctor for Cause, and Doctor for Pause for joining in Musing's hand and making this possible. And thank you everyone for joining. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.